Welcome to ILTV's Israel Daily. I'm Amit Harari, and coming up in today's newscast, ongoing unrest in Judea and Samaria waking many voices in the still unformed government. Meantime, asking the hard questions, anti-Semitism rising into the mainstream media worldwide, and Jews everywhere are concerned. But are we having the right conversation to address it? And later, the fallout from the supercharged World Cup match between D.C. and Tehran. New details on the Tuesday morning car ramming attack in Judea and Samaria now revealed. ILTV's Aaron Porras has the story.
24 hours passing following a shocking car ramming terror attack in the Binyamin community of Samaria, and security forces now releasing new information about the event and its resulting investigation.
אני רוצה להביע את הערכתי לשוטרים על חתירה למגע, על דבקות במשימה, על מקצועיות, שבסופו של דבר חיסלו את המחבל שביצע את הפיגוע. זה מה שאנחנו מצפים מהשוטרים שלנו במהלך הפעילות שלהם, והשוטרים האלה פעלו בדיוק כמצופה וכנדרש משוטרים במשטרת ישראל.
The IDF explaining that a terrorist ran over a young female soldier near the settlement of Kochav Yaakov before fleeing the scene. The victim found conscious, suffering from bleeding and bruising on her head and upper body. Magen David Adom ambulance services treating her at the scene before evacuating her to intensive care in serious but stable condition. But the attacker, after attempting to drive away from the scene, caught and neutralized after a short manhunt. The terrorist running into a police obstruction where he exited the vehicle and was shot by officers in the middle of the road.
במהלך נסיעה שגרתית קיבלנו דיווח בקשר על פיגוע שהתרחש בכיכר כוכב יעקב. הרכב נסע על ציר 60, חלף על פנינו, ביצענו מרדף וביקשנו גם חסימות קדימה. במהלך המרדף הבנו שהרכב מסכן את החיים של אזרחים מסביבנו. אנחנו נסענו אחריו, השוטר מנשה הוציא את פלג גוף עליון מחוץ לניידת, ביצע ירי מדויק לעבר הרכב וניטרל את המחבל.
He was identified as a 45-year-old Palestinian father of 5 from a city near Ramallah, and with an Israeli employment permit to work at the Rami Levy supermarket in the Shar Binyamin industrial zone. He was recently fired, however, leading to speculation that the PA's pay-for-slay policy played a direct role in his decision to commit this attack.
With us now to speak about the latest security updates from the city that was discussed a lot in the past few days is spokesman of the Jewish community in Hebron, Ishai Fleischer. Thank you so much for joining us, Ishai.
Thank you very much.
So it isn't new, but what are the feelings in Judea and Samaria these days after all recent terror attacks there?
Yeah, there's definitely been a few terror attacks that kind of seem to come faster. And, you know, I could tell you that my own daughter, for example, just told me the other day, like, boy, it's kind of like scary around here. And there's a feeling like that the Arabs of Judea and Samaria, the Palestinians, are more, part of them anyway, the part that's into jihadism, are more willing to carry out terror attacks. I think that part of that can be explained by the resistance to the new potential nationalist right-wing government. And I think that the statement that the Euro left and their partners in the jihadist elements of the Palestinian community and the Palestinian Authority want to say is, you guys are not going to crack down on us. Peace is not going to come through strength. And we're going to show you that we are just as strong as ever. And so there's definitely an uptick in violence. From the nationalist side, we say, no, it's time to crack down on jihadism. It's time to take it out of the mosques and the schools and out of the social media. And we shall not be, we're not willing to allow the amassment of illegal weapons. We're not willing to see land theft in Area C. We're not willing to be bullied on the roads. So we're going to push back on that. But I do expect a continued uptick in violence in the next foreseeable future.
Now, a lot of different voices are heard from the still unformed government. Do you see the situation really changing when that finally happens?
Do you mean that will the government be able to change the situation on the ground? Is that your question?
Yes. I mean, how do you see it changing things?
Well, I think we're talking about broad sweeps, not little tactical operations. I think we're asking the question of, will we abide the atmosphere of anti-Semitism and jihadism in Judea and Samaria and in Israel in general? And so this new government wants to tackle what has not been tackled for so many years, which is the production of jihadist thinking, of brainwashing, and the Palestinian Authority. I have Palestinian Authority TV in my house. If you watch 5 minutes of it, it's basically like 5 minutes of blood-curdling anti-Semitism, Palestinian nationalism, and and Islamicism, all rolled into one with every 5-minute bite that you consume. And that's the same in the schools, and the same in the social media, and the same in the mosques. So will this government be able to tackle it? Well, I think it's going to be trying to, and I think that that's very a correct attitude, and it's not going to be easy. But I think when we start dealing with it and looking at the problem in the face and calling it by name what it is, and not using the false narratives of it's because of the occupation or because of lack of rights or because of so-called apartheid and all these things, but when we say what it really is, which is what is the motivation, which is jihadism, then I think we'll start to tackle the issue in a real way.
The suspect from yesterday's attack is named as a 45-year-old father of 5 from Betunia near Ramallah. What do you think motivated a man like this with a permit to work in Israel to commit a crime like this? Was he radicalized? Was it anger over losing his job? And what role does pay for slave play in his choice to become a shaheed, a terrorist?
We had an attack in Hebron recently where the guy had been given a diagnosis of just a few days to live with a terminal cancer, and then he goes out and he commits this crime, and it pays, because when you say pay for slay, it sounds like a term, but in reality, there is really pay for slay. You kill or try to hurt Jews, and your family will be taken care of. And instead of you dying from cancer, you now died as a shaheed, as a martyr, and so you really came out a hero. So there's no question that that adds in the motivation. And in general, I think that elements in the Palestinian society, and I include in that Israeli Arabs who identify with Palestinianism, so they with their own words, I think that they are excited to destroy the Jewish state, to take over the Jewish state, to inherit the Jewish state, and make it their own, to fly a different flag on top of Jerusalem in the Knesset. And so sometimes, a person who has a nice car and a nice job and a nice family, even so, he's excited by the prospect of being part of something greater, and that is these ideas of Islamic jihadism. And so these are the things that have to be suppressed. In the Middle East, it's basically subdue or be subdued. We have to subdue the jihad, or else they'll try to subdue us. And there's no way around it, because you can't really appease it.
Yishai Flasher, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Despite reporting great progress in coalition talks, Prime Minister-designate Benjamin Netanyahu now formally requesting an extension for negotiations to form a government. Netanyahu has until December 11 to form a government, but the T's not yet crossed and the I's not yet dotted with all of his would-be coalition partners. So Netanyahu asking for reportedly receiving a 14-day extension for President Herzog as of Wednesday morning. Meantime, with the extension, Netanyahu will have plenty of time to finalize ministerial and committee appointments, as well as to approve the so-called override clause that would allow Shas party chief Aryeh Deri to assume a ministerial position despite his 2 criminal convictions. That said, it may also be an opportunity for other more centrist parties to join the leading coalition. Team USA defeated Iran last night in the most politically charged game of the World Cup. The 1-0 victory elevated the United States to the final 16 in Qatar and sent Iran packing. More from ILTV's Steve Leibovich.
It was about so much more than a game. It was widely reported that the Iranian players and their families were threatened by the Iranian regime to avoid any reference to the mass protests at home against the tyrannical Islamic regime. The United States and Israel are widely vilified in Iran, and a victory over Team USA would have received wide propaganda use by the Ayatollahs. On the field, the game was a thriller, and the victory was assured only at the final whistle.
It was wonderful, and we qualified, right? So
yes, we won.
Yes, Iran's out. US in.
Yes,
we win this year, huh?
In the U.S., even the president celebrated the soccer victory.
USA, USA. That's a big game, man. When I spoke to the coach and the players, I said, you can do this. They went, they did it. God love them. Anyway, just thought you might want to hear.
The victorious Team USA now continues on its quest for the World Cup. For the Iranian team, the question is, what kind of reception will they receive back home? And will some of the players join in the mass protests?
On the sidelines of the World Cup, the poor treatment of the Israeli media continues. Comedian Guy Ahman was in Qatar making videos when he was forced to return to Israel for fear of being attacked. This after a video titled "Expose Them, They're Criminals" was circulated, calling Ahman a soldier in Israel's occupation army was widely circulated among Arab fans around the World Cup. They also published private information about 34-year-old Ahman and said falsely claimed that his army unit was involved in atrocities, saying this is the face of Israel at the World Cup. Ahman intended to stay in Qatar until the end of the week, but decided to get on the first available flight back to Israel. There have been numerous reports about hostility shown by some fans towards Israeli reporters, and social media is full of videos of people taking pride in disrupting what they call the Zionist media. One Israeli reporter summed it up by calling it TikTok shaming, and that's a part of the story. Former U.S. Vice President Mike Pence joined those condemning former Prime Minister Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago dinner with rapper Kanye West's notorious white nationalist Nick Fuentes. More in the following story.
Pence said that Trump demonstrated profoundly poor judgment and suggested that he apologize for meeting the Holocaust-denying Jew-hater Fuentes and the rapper Kanye West, who recently made a series of anti-Semitic posts, causing him to lose many endorsements and business agreements.
President Trump was wrong to give a white nationalist, an anti-Semite, and a Holocaust denier a seat at the table. And I think he should apologize for it, and he should denounce those individuals and their hateful rhetoric without qualification.
Pence is only the latest to scold Trump over the meeting. Others include ZOA head Mort Klein, who honored Trump with an award just weeks ago. As for Kanye, he continues with his anti-Semitic tropes. Yesterday, he walked out of a podcast after doubling down on his anti-Semitic comments.
Yeah, I think they've been extremely unfair to you.
Who is they, though? We can't say who they is, can we?
Corporate press. I'm not using the. I don't use the word as the way I guess you guys use. I'm talking about.
It is them, though, isn't it? I mean, because
no.
because when you think about it, consider it. In 2018.
What do you mean it's not?
What do I mean? Like, okay, so how about? Are you leaving?
Are you referring to the press?
Trump admits that he had a scheduled dinner with West, but insists that he had no idea who Fuentes is. Trump has yet to apologize for inviting the two Jew haters to dinner.
The StopAntisemitism.org group devoted to combating anti-Semitism has launched an online poll for the Anti-Semite of the Year. Thousands have already cast their ballots for who will win the dubious honor from 10 candidates, and voters are now down to the final 3. Disgraced rapper and fashion mogul Kanye West is a leading candidate following his recent online tirades on social media, saying he was going DEFCON 3 on the Jews. Real estate developer Mohammed Khadid is also a nominee. He spreads online hate and conspiracy theories, promoting the false idea that Jews and Israel control the media. And last but not least, white nationalist John Minaedo from the Goyim Defense League. He directed followers to spread flyers across the U.S. blaming Jews for everything from COVID to the war in Ukraine. Charming top 3. So lists like these are just a tiny glimpse of the rising anti-Semitism we have worldwide nowadays. And joining us now to discuss more of it is Chen Mazik, Senior Fellow at the Tel Aviv Institute. Hi, Chen. Thank you so much for joining.
Thanks so much for having me.
So, Chen, it's safe to say that anti-Semitism is almost rising into the mainstream as it's rising immensely all over the world. Where do you see this going?
Yeah, I mean, it's the numbers of hate speech and anti-Semitic incidents are at all-time high in America. It's really dangerous and really scary. I mean, we speak with people at the Tel Aviv Institute that influencers that are afraid to speak about their Jewish identity. We're seeing people that don't want to put their menorah and Chanukiah out in during Hanukkah because of the hate speech that we're seeing. Incidents are happening over and over again. The head of the FBI was saying that he's really concerned about the situation of Jews in America. So all of this really is alarming. And I was talking to one of our researchers, Dr. Becker at the Tel Aviv Institute, and he said that it really reminds him a lot of the research that is done before the Holocaust. There's really similar pattern on the hate speech that we're seeing. And I don't want to be an alarmist, but the Holocaust did not start with gas chambers. It started with hate speech and dehumanization of the Jewish community. That's what led to it, and I think that's what we are seeing today, and that really is alarming. And I think that people and leaders have to start taking action to prevent it.
How can you explain the timing? I mean, what's so different now that it's actually at its highest?
Yeah, I think, well, I said it before that I think that if Hitler had a Twitter account, probably way more Jews would have been killed in the Holocaust. And I think that in the age of social media, when people are allowed to give freedom to some of their darkest beliefs and darkest thoughts about hateful thoughts, specifically about the Jewish community, because we know that the Jewish community are often scapegoated to everything that is wrong in societies. And I think that really allows anti-Semitism to spread, and for people that would otherwise think twice about spreading those ideas to actually share them because they see that there's other people like them out there. And I think social media is really a big part of it. We are right after a pandemic, and the economies around the world are still recovering. That means that there's a financial difficulty to many people, and all of this together is really what makes people discuss these issues and speak about these issues and be more radicalized in their hate speech. And I think that's what we are seeing. This is why the numbers and the fear is so great, and that's why violence and acts of hate are. I mean, just a few weeks ago, we saw that there was a graveyard in America that was vandalized with swastikas. In a highway in LA, people were holding signs saying that Kanye was right. Of course, Kanye West, and the hate speech that we're seeing that is becoming more mainstream. If people would feel more ashamed about their anti-Semitism today, Kanye West, in every interview that he gives, is spewing anti-Semitic BS, and it's really what we're seeing that is going on. That he's really inciting a lot of it with his comment, and he's being emboldened by white supremacists. And unfortunately, even former President Trump has met with him. So all of this really accumulates to the hate speech and the violence and attacks that we are seeing these days.
Speaking more about Kanye and other active anti-Semites who Trump is meeting with, how do you explain that? I mean, he was president before, will be running again in 2024. Isn't he worried about losing many Jewish supporters who are already so critical of him now? And why would he do that? I mean, what's the thought behind it?
I couldn't tell you. I don't know why he would do something like that. I do think, and that's something that probably many of your viewers would agree, that President Trump, former President Trump, only cares about himself. Even when he moved the embassy or when he said that he loves Israel, it was always conditioned. There was always a condition to his support. It was always about himself. And I think even in this case, he doesn't think about anyone else but himself. And when he speaks about Israel, he speaks to a white Christian audience, and he knows that this is his voting bloc. And I think that also meeting with Kanye West and Nick Fontaine and white supremacists that is openly spread anti-Jewish ideas and saying that he's an anti-Semite. For former President Trump to do that is really telling that his strategy or the target audience for his next election campaign is going to be these communities of white supremacists, of neo-Nazis in America that would probably be mobilized and more engaged in voting because they are so hateful. It's scary. It is.
It definitely is.
Really a dangerous act.
It definitely is. And well, the world, the media outlets, etc., are focusing mainly on punishing, firing, and creating lists like these we saw, choosing anti-Semites in the world, instead of really addressing problematic views, trying to educate people and maybe change their minds. Do you think we're addressing extremism and anti-Semitism the right way these days? And if not, what else can be done?
we're not. And it's something that we're saying at the Tel Aviv Institute all the time. All those inflammatory headlines, all those articles that are not doing anything, are not educating people about anti-Semitism, are not doing any favors to our community. And I see also many Jewish voices online that instead of explaining why something is anti-Semitic, will just, post something saying Kanye is an anti-Semite. Right, he is an anti-Semite, but let's really break it down for non-Jews to understand. It's not our job. We shouldn't be tasked with this labor, but we are in a point that we have to do it. We have to explain and educate the world about anti-Semitic tropes, about the Holocaust, that third of American young folks don't even know what the Holocaust is or challenge it. So all of this has to come into effect and into our hands, and we have to act to make sure that the future generation will not grow with not knowing what anti-Semitism is. And with social media, it's going increasingly towards a place that is very dark for our community, and we need to be very vigilant in this fight.
And you're right with everything you're saying. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Really appreciate it.
An amazing first-of-its-kind Israeli breakthrough. Researchers from the Hadassah Hospital in Jerusalem succeeded in creating male and female stem cells with the same genetic load from the same person. According to the researchers, the model developed could lead to new discoveries in the study of differences between the sexes, assisting in the development of gender-adapted medicine. The Israeli scientists from Hadassah Medical Center in Jerusalem started with cells donated by a man who has both male and female cells due to a genetic syndrome. Professor Benjamin Rubinoff, one of the research leaders, speaks about their findings being a breakthrough in the field of gender medicine. The U.S. National Institutes of Health started changing its policy in recent years and now requires that all medical research funded by it conducted equally on both sexes. The unique stem cell system developed in this research will lead to new discoveries about differences between the sexes and contribute to developing better medicine adapted both men and women. Israeli pride. Now, a surprise dream discovery during a routine school trip in the archaeological site of Azor, some 7 kilometers southeast of Tel Aviv, Israel. ILTV's Aaron Poor is reporting.
Gilad Stern from the Israel Antiquities Authority Educational Center finding a 3,000-year-old inscribed Scarab seal while leading a group of 8th grade students through the site.
ממצא מדהים שהוא חלומו של כל חובב ארכיאולוגיה נמצא על ידי תלמידי כיתה ח' מבית ספר רבין באזור במהלך סיור במסגרת פרויקט מורה דרך בו הם לומדים על אתרי אזור במטרה להדריך כיתות נמוכות מהם. פתאום באחד האתרים נמצא על פני הקרקע הדבר המדהים הזה.
The scarab designed in the shape of a common dung beetle, which ancient Egyptians associated with the creator god, as the beetle rolls balls of dung twice its own size in order to stow future offspring. Further, this particular piece used as a seal and a symbol of power and status.
חרפושיות היו מעין חותם בצורה של חיפושית זבל, שהיא הייתה אחד מהאלים המוכרים במצרים, ובתחתית החרפושית הזאת יש איזשהו דגם.
Made of faience, a silicate-like material coated with blue-green glaze, the seal was likely fitted on a necklace or a ring.
התיאור בחרפושית הזאת הוא לשני דמויות. יש לנו דמות אחת יושבת, ודמות מעליה עומדת עם איזשהו ראש מוארך, כאשר היד של הדמות העומדת היא מורמת מעל הדמות היושבת. זה נראה כתהליך של הכתרה או משיכה של אותו אדם חשוב, כנראה שליט, אולי שליט מקומי, אולי מלך העיר הקטנה שהייתה באזור אזור, כאשר הדמות הממליכה או המושכת היא דמות מצרית, אולי אפילו פרעה. החרפושית הזאת יש לה איזשהו חור משני הצדדים, שאפשר להפוך אותה לאו טבעת או שרשרת.
Bronze Age specialist from the Israel Antiquities Authority, Dr. Amir Golani, further explaining that the seal likely dating back to somewhere between 1500 and 1000 BCE, where the local Canaanites were ruled by the Egyptian Empire, and as such, hundreds of similar scarabs discovered in Israel, mostly in grave sites. Given the space and situation in which it was found, though, it's difficult to determine the exact original context of the piece's use.
Now let's take a look at our weather forecast. Tonight the forecast calling for partly cloudy skies around most of the country with an average low of about 11 degrees Celsius or 52 Fahrenheit. And then tomorrow we're expecting clear skies with top temperatures of 23 degrees Celsius or 75 degrees Fahrenheit. And that's all for today's news. For more updates from Israel on all your devices, check out our ILTV channels on YouTube, Facebook, and Telegram, and subscribe to our ILTV newsletter. I'm Amit Harari. Be well, and thank you so much for watching.